Hi guys, I'm back. Hello everybody. I'm going to be reading chapter 6, and let's hope and pray there is no errors. Um, when this is all over and done with, I'm going to give my um, opinion about my editing skills. I laugh about it because you can't let this stuff drag you down. Because if you go and you get all like bent out of shape and upset and stuff, it's just not going to be good. So, yeah, so I'm going to give my thoughts on that. I do have some great news in two fronts. One, somebody bought a physical copy of my book. I am so happy about that. So, whoever was out there, thank you so much. What I am going to do when Amazon downloads my royalties, I'm going to take my first dollar, yes, my first dollar from my royalties, and I am going to put it on the wall as a reminder, or I may just frame it as a reminder of all the hard work that I did to make my dream come true and everything. So very excited about that. And second, the cover art that I personally made for A Peachy Death, it got approved. So you're going to get the same exact cover from the ebook as you do with the physical edition. So that is over. I'm very happy. I really worked hard to make sure that there was no errors. And I did find plenty of errors, so I was really happy to get the new version uploaded, and now my book will be coming out the 17th. The 4th, I'm going to attempt to get two copies of the book. One of them is going to go to the library. The second one is going to be my own personal personal book for my library. And yeah, so time to get to it. So here goes. There's no errors. Oh man, I worked so hard on revising this thing. Alright, chapter 6. Barbara went by what remained of Dying to Read and felt sadness that everything Taylor had worked for was now gone. His life, business, and mother. The smell of burning wood made Barbara sneeze and her eyes water. Sad thing to happen, Tommy told her, and she turned to see him standing there. Yes, it is, Barbara said, though I'm glad that it didn't spread anywhere else. It almost did, he said. The seamstress was leaving her store when she saw the flames. The trucks arrived quickly and took care of it. What time was that? Barbara asked him. Think around 9, he answered. I don't know for certain, but I was among those that was watching them work. That detective, of course, was watching us. Of course, Barbara said, shaking her head in disgust. When someone sets a fire, they like to hang around among the others to watch their work. It's a fact, and the detective knows that as much as anyone that knows. I think it's sick, Tommy said, a look of genuine disgust on his face. If you want to waste your time watching something that disgusting, then you deserve all that comes to you. I agree, Barbara said. I went to a murder trial one time to better understand the process, and some of the evidence was revolting. Arson takes a certain amount of anger towards the target. It's like when you blow something up at a funeral. I think it's to add more horror to the event, like what happened to Misty wasn't horrifying enough. Yeah, I figured that much, Tommy said, though I will admit that I don't understand how the fire was set. Everyone on this strip knows that Dying to Read was being watched by the police. To prevent what happened last night from happening, Barbara reasoned, though I'm pretty sure they're getting their clocks cleaned by their boss. That leaves your store, Emma, and the one that opened last year, said Tommy. And that's what worries me, Barbara said. Everything about this worries me. When Barbara returned to her store, the tea party had already ended, and they spent an hour cleaning up. Sally reported that all the women thought the party had succeeded. "I hope they thanked you," said Barbara, pointing out that it had been Sally's idea to even allow it to be hosted. The following day, Barbara sold 3 e-readers, 11 mystery books, and 2 books that were part of a long list of books that had been banned. Daniel thought that it would be a great idea to list them so people could buy them. Barbara personally felt it was a great idea. Naturally, she didn't have the books on a table. They were hidden among the shelves. "Do you want to order some pizza?" Daniel suddenly asked them. "Why?" "Because I want pizza," he replied, annoyed at being asked. "I think it's a great idea," Barbara said, wanting to keep a massive fight from occurring. "I'll call it in." Bookstores were no place to argue. The rest of the day passed without any more issues, which she was happy about. She helped a mother pick up a book for her daughter and help an older customer find a book he wanted in large print. She also sold most of the books in large print. After she had closed up, she counted the till and then took Ching back home. All during the day, Ching hadn't acted like his usual self. That told her that he wanted Ming back. The book club had sent Barbara an email waiting for her when she returned home, telling her they had been grateful for the tea party she had handled. There was no mention of thanks to Sally and Daniel for their actions. Barbara shook her head and turned her computer off. Ungrateful people, the whole lot of them. "I think they think I'm the only one that works there," Barbara told Ching and Ming. She turned the TV on, flipped through the channels, not seeing anything that looked even remotely good. Finally, she gave up and turned on her e-reader to a book that she was still on but hadn't gotten around to reading more. It wasn't that she didn't like the book. Things going on around her had diverted her attention. Now she focused all of her attention on what was on the screen, leaving all of her troubles behind. "We got a call," Detective Hawk told Miller. The ATF had agreed to allow Hawk and Miller to continue investigating anything in the case that wasn't bomb-related. The fragments that had been recovered were sent to the FBI lab in Quantico. "Who called?" Miller asked. "Emma Stone," he answered, putting his coat on. "It seems like she's getting death threats now." "From who?" "Probably from the same person," he answered, checking his pockets. "Both of us are going to have a word with her." "You don't think she's next?" "I have a feeling that she is," said Hawk. "Come on, let's get out of here." "Is the same thing going to happen to you as it did the others?" a much older woman asked Barbara the following day. She could tell everyone was worried about what had happened, and it was nice to know that people worried about her. It made her feel like people cared. "Everyone, nothing is going to happen to this store," she told them. "The police are going to make sure of it. Like they promised that nothing would happen to Taylor's store. I might not have liked him, but burning down his store is a low blow." Everyone agreed. Pardon me, guys. I gotta drink something. Don't you hear when you can't get the dang top off? Oh, man. Anyone wants to know, I'm drinking raspberry tea. Just for people's 411. Oh, man. "And I agree," Barbara said to Mr. Tiller, "but I'm going to ensure everything is done to keep that from happening." She could tell they didn't believe her, but she thought she could. And all she needed was to figure a couple things out. First of all, she needed to find out the history of Misty, anyone who might want her dead. Something told her that Misty's death wasn't related to any group that hated what she did for a living. Sometimes it was a person that you never expected. "I'm heading for the library," Barbara told her friends, grabbing her coat and keys. "How long are you going to be?" Sally asked her. "A couple hours," Barbara answered. "I need to find out a couple things." "Good luck," Daniel said, and Barbara left. The Waterhorse Library was located in a 100-year-old former tile factory. It was a 4-story brick monster that didn't scream library until you went inside. Barbara headed to the basement where they kept old reels and papers. The reels were maintained on microfilm that was supposed to last 50 years. The woman who ran it, an old friend of her mother, greeted her. "What can I do for you?" she asked her. I need microfilm from about 20 years ago, Barbara told her, starting around March. March was the month that Enchanted Reed opened. She had discovered that when she had gotten around to introduce herself to the local business. Misty had it displayed that she had opened her shop on March 11th. The woman came back with a film and handed it over. This will take time, she reminded Barbara. I know, but it's important. She found a seat and loaded the first film into the reader. She moved to March 11th and found the article she sought. New bookstore opens to the public. Misty Hart, 37, and her husband Chuck Hart celebrated the grand opening of Enchanted Reed. The store will replace the old shoe store that's been in business since the early 1900s. We are so delighted to be able to open a place that will bring wonderful memories to everyone that comes in, Mrs. Hart told the paper. I hope everyone who walks in will leave with a new love. Waterhorse has been lacking a bookstore for the last 20 years. To have one finally open will be a great asset to the community. Barbara paused her reading and looked at the photo. It showed a much younger Misty with a much younger Chuck. Unlike Chuck, who had heard Sam talk about lying in his kitchen, this one had no clue about the nightmare coming in 20 years. Both of them looked happy and excited about the future. She slowly reviewed each article and found nothing to tell her anything. She moved on the following year with only a couple times that Enchanted Reed was offering sales on some of their books. The library will close in 10 minutes, a voice suddenly said, breaking Barbara away from her reading. If anyone has any books, please check them out now. She stood up and took the one she used and looked for the woman. She found her putting some old periodicals away. You know, I almost did not pronounce that correctly. I wrote it correctly, but sometimes, am I pronouncing this correctly? I know I wrote it correctly, but am I pronouncing it correctly? Alright. I'll be back tomorrow, she told the woman. I'll have them waiting for you, she said. May I ask you a question? Sure, Barbara said, wondering what she would ask her. You're Lisa's Duff's daughter, right? I was a Duff before I married, Barbara said, so yes, I'm her daughter. I'm so happy you decided to return home, she gushed. Lisa called me plenty of times, talking about how hard life in Chicago was and how poor you all had become. Yes, it was hard, Barbara admitted, but I was determined not to remain poor forever. Took plenty of chances and made something of myself. That's good to hear, she said. I have most of your books. My favorite course is your Muffin Mystery series. I'm glad that you enjoyed them, Barbara said to her. Barbara, I know your time is very short, but I have a reason for keeping you away from your shop. A couple of days ago, I was asked by my boss, Mr. Feinhardt, to go up to the young adult section to put some books away. The odd thing was that, as I approached, I overheard someone talking. I don't know who it was, but a man was talking on the phone. What was he talking about? The murders, of course, she answered. Was talking about how Misty was good for nothing, and he was asking which store he should hit next, which person he wanted dead. Do you know who this man was? She shook her head and said, I'm very good at people once I hear them talking. However, the man's back was turned, and I was too terrified to go around and see who it was. I left before he saw me listening in. So there are two people involved, Barbara reasoned, and the woman nodded. Have you told the police? They never asked, she answered. They came by to get some film that Mr. Feinhardt had, the ones that you were looking at, and none of them came to ask me anything. Thanks for telling me, Barbara told her, and I'll tell my mother that you still think of her. That would make my heart happy, she remarked, and Barbara headed for the elevator and left the building. Barbara called the store. Sally answered and asked how everything went. Not bad, she said. We sold out of the new Stephen King novel. I'll have more ordered, Barbara promised. Anything else? Just some annoying children are causing problems. Sam took care of that. Good, she said. Head home as soon as you're done with the till. Right you are, boss lady, Sally said, and then Barbara hung up. Barbara was glad to get home 20 minutes later. She had been thinking a lot about what her mother's friend had told her. As she pulled up, she saw Sam waiting on her. He had Ching in his carrier. I got you a spot at the vet's office to have Ching fixed, he informed her. Thanks, she said, glad for the help. So what did you find out at the library, he asked, as Barbara unlocked the door and closed it. Not much, she said, opening the carrier to let Ching out. I saw an old friend of my mother's, and she told me that she had overheard a man asking something who should be next. No, someone, not something. That was my fault, That was my fault in saying it, not how I wrote it. I saw a friend of my mother's, and she told me that she overheard a man asking someone who should be next. Did the police question her? Sam asked, and he knew that they probably hadn't. No, she answered. She said that all they did was get the microfilm that her boss had. She was never asked any questions, which I'm not surprised. They didn't know that she had any information. And I don't doubt Hawk and his partner will want to hear about this. I had a feeling that you were going to say that, Barbara said, and I'm going to see if I can catch him tomorrow and tell him. Did she know who he was? Barbara shook her head and said, the only way she could tell who the person was is if he talks again, which might not happen. Barbara knew that Sam was right. So, like, every time I get down a percentage, I'm going to take a drink. Right. The following day, Barbara stayed home, leaving the opening to Sally and her crew. She drove to the station, hoping that Hawk would be there. To her luck, she saw him getting out of his car without his partner. Hey, want some breakfast? She asked him. He asked, do you think this is a good idea? Yes, Barbara answered. Why, afraid that breakfast will ruin your whole day? No, he answered. Well, then, follow me, she said. I have something that I need to tell you, and I don't want others to overhear. Fine, but you're paying. She saluted him and told him where to meet her. So this old friend of your mother's overheard a man talking about the murder, she said, after they had ordered breakfast. Correct, she said. My mother had some pretty nosy friends growing up. Most moved on to other things, but Jenny wasn't one of them. Still here. And so do you? Barbara said nothing to that statement, but said, she told me that she would be able to tell me who it was if she heard him talking again. I doubt that anyone will believe her, Hawk told Barbara. We want evidence, not someone's ability to determine who the killer is. Well, outside the lineup, of course. Of course, she said, because people have terrible memories. She nodded. When Barbara arrived for work at 11, there was at least 10 boxes of books waiting on her. Barbara found the Scholastic books and tore open the box with her hands. Inside were all sorts of Goosebump books, including 11 box sets that she had paid a bit extra to get. I just love these things, Sally told her. You know they did a show back in the 90s? I remember them, Barbara said, remembering some of her best memories. My children got a kick out of them. I hated them, Daniel remarked, making Sam glare at him. Was Daniel trying to get his partner mad at him by trashing most of the things Sam liked? Well, I'm glad we got them, Sam said, still glaring at him. I'll put them in the computer and then on the shelves. Good idea, Barbara said to him. Daniel, one day we are both going to talk. What did I do? He asked, throwing up his hands. Stop trashing people's memories, she said. That's not what this business is about. And she followed Sam into the back. Oh, sorry. Personally, Barbara hated getting mad at Daniel. Both he and Sam had been together for 10 years. However, with all the things happening and knowing how much this business meant to Sam, she expected Daniel to continue not acting like the world's biggest idiot. Don't let it get to you, Sally said to her. Everyone is having the world's worst month, and Daniel should have realized that you weren't going to put up with shit from anyone, including us. Thanks, Barbara said, feeling comforted by Sally's words. That made me feel a lot better. No problem, she said, smiling a smile that could give her anything. Ching looked at Barbara like she was the worst person in the world. Both she and Sam had hurried the so-called fixed kitten to his appointment, and right now he wasn't feeling love towards them. No one is going to hurt you. Ching didn't say a thing. When Barbara arrived back, she found Ming sleeping. Her baby opened one eye, yawned, and then went back to sleep. Some people have all the luck, Barbara said, and went to take a shower to get ready to get the day off of her. The day she had, Had an actual smell. Stress. Minus the whole thing with Ching, it had been one long day. As much as she loved what she did for a living, selling books was challenging. Of course, nothing was easy no matter how much you loved it. She pressed the button and the female voice said, "You have 2 unread messages. Why do I have a feeling that one of them is my agent?" First unread message at 7:53 a.m. The voice said, and then her mother's voice appeared on the line. "Honey, I heard from your daughter what happened. Why the hell didn't you tell me this all started? Let the police handle this one and stick to your books." The message ended and Barbara knew immediately this was why she didn't tell her mother anything anymore. She could always consider her a child, which she hated more than anything. Last unread message at 10:57 a.m. "Barbara, this is Matthew," the voice of her agent said, proving Barbara right. "Would you be interested in writing a children's horror book? This could be a good opportunity to get into the genre." "Great," Barbara muttered. "He wants to drag me back into writing." If she took the offer, she couldn't run her business. As much as she loved all the opportunities that writing had given her, she had given it up for a reason. She called back to tell Matthew that she wasn't interested. Hawk and Miller both were looking over the 7 death threats that Emma Stone had gotten. All of them had brought nasty to a whole new level. The writer had to be the same person who had killed the 2 other booksellers. People like this always included things that only the police would have known. It was a way of ensuring the reader knew who they were talking about. "Nothing in those films told us anything," Miller said, "and we've been through them several times." "Then something is missing that we can't find," Hawk told him. "Something is hidden from anyone that might be able to figure anything out. What I want to know is, how did our killers/arsonists know that our units were in the front?" "Probably spotted them," Hawk reasoned. "It wasn't as though we were hiding them in trees. Though I will be the first to admit that our firebug did a good job hiding that he was there, and making our men look like fools." Hawk looked over the notes and said, "I'm taking these to someone. She might be able to help." Miller nodded and Hawk grabbed the notes and left the station. Oh man, sorry. Barbara had to admit that she was shocked when Hawk arrived at her front door. She motioned him to come inside and he said, "How educated are you?" "Is that supposed to be a joke?" "No, I'm serious," he said. "So am I," she retorted, closing the door behind her. Look, Miss Stone has gotten these notes, and I would like you to tell me how educated the writer is." "Follow me," she said, leading him into her office, which she had once used to write her final book, the first book that she had written when she had moved back. Her office had an antique walnut desk, executive chair, and wall-to-wall bookshelves lined with all the books she had read. "Let me get my glasses." "Nice office." "Thanks," Barbara said. "I was thinking about letting your wife see it." "She would like that," he told her. Barbara put her bifocals on and handed her the notes. "I can tell that this is the killer," she said. "Of course you knew I would tell you that." "Naturally," he said. "I can tell you that he's very educated," she said, looking them over. "He's been to college, most likely university." "How can you tell that?" "From how he writes," she answered. "When you read my books, detective, do my characters come across as intelligent or stupid?" "I don't read hardly any books." "Has your wife told you that she thinks that my characters are intelligent or stupid?" "I don't ask her what she thinks of the books she reads." Barbara sighed and said, "My books have sold as many as they have because I make sure that they speak in a way that ordinary people don't. Most people will talk however they want without caring if their sentences make sense. None of their conversations need to worry about spelling mistakes or grammar usage. That's the way that I write, and that's the way that I speak. You can always tell if someone is intelligent or pretending to be brilliant when you read something. The killer isn't doing any of those things. He's smart, been through college, and knows what he's doing." "And he's insane," Hawk answered. "That as well," Barbara agreed. "However, you know, and I know, that he's bound to make a mistake, though I doubt that anyone would have picked it up if he had." And when he makes a mistake, you'll see that under all the intellect, he's not as smart as he thinks. Why? Just something that I've seen, she said, because even though I know something about murder, even I can overlook things. After Hawk had left, Barbara looked at the boarded up window that was due to get a replacement tomorrow morning. She had left a message on Sam's voicemail telling him that he would have to run the store in the morning. She also thought over the notes that Hawk had shown her. Something deep inside told her that Emma was going to be killed. No one seemed to know where he was, why he was doing this, or when he would strike next. And that terrified her more than anything. She then turned and looked at Ming, who was sleeping. Why couldn't life be as simple as a cat's life? Why did this world have to have assholes that wanted to hurt and kill other people? She picked up her phone and called Emma to check on her. Thanks for calling, she said. The police came by. Really, what do they want? Barbara asked her. I'm getting threats, Barbara, she confessed. I didn't know what to do anymore. Barbara felt the tears welling up. It hurt to see her friend in pain. Stay strong, she urged. I know it's hard, and I've been down that road, but you must stay strong. I know, she said, and Barbara could hear the fear in her voice. But those threats, knowing he's still out there, make it hard to sleep. I had my husband take the most valuable items out of the store, just in case the psycho goes after my shop. Are you talking about your rare books? Yes, and the books I had since childhood, she said. My mother gave them to me, and I don't want them to be destroyed. Doesn't sound like a bad idea, she told her, and then Emma yawned. I'm heading to bed, she said. I'll see you around. And Emma hung up. The following day, Barbara watched as the glass men arrived to put her new window in. He didn't talk much, which was okay with her. She wasn't in the mood to speak to anyone. She called Emma again, but this time there was no answer, so she called the station. Sorry. I want to talk to Detective Hawk. He's not in right now, the woman at the desk answered. May I ask who this is? Barbara Market, I own the Book Nook, she told her. Just let him know that I called when he comes in. I'll let him know, she promised, then hung up. She had lunch at the Captain's Inn and watched as people passed by the window. She got a call from Sally telling her that about 50 people agreed to attend the event on Saturday. Sally, I have a wild theory, Barbara told her. Okay, what wild theory is that? She asked, and Barbara tapped her fingers on the table. I think that whoever killed both Misty and Taylor is going to be at the event, she said. There was a pause and then, gross, why would someone risk being caught? I think that's the point, she said. One of the things that I always tell people when asked how these idiots are always caught is that they get too full of themselves. They believe that they're better than those trying to catch them. They develop brains and think they can just walk into the event and no one will suspect anything. And I might know how to catch the killer in a net. Why do I feel bad? I won't like the plan? Trust me, you will, she promised, then hung up. That afternoon, Barbara went to the park where the event would take place. The chairs weren't even out due to the rain, but the boundaries had been set up, and a couple of men were walking around and checking things. They would have loved this, someone remarked, and Sally turned to see a man standing there. Did you know them? He looked at Barbara and said, I went to school with Misty, and I taught Taylor when he was in middle school. Taylor had a wonderful grasp of the written word. I'm surprised he never wrote a book in his life. I can understand, said Barbara. I was raised poor and worked hard to get out of it. I, like Taylor, had a wonderful grasp of the written word. However, I wrote books. And your name is? Barbara Market, she answered, and they shook hands. So, you knew Misty when she was younger? I didn't know her as well as say her parents did, but I knew her. The girl knew more bad words at 5 than most children. She always got into trouble over her mouth and her temper. Are you surprised that she went into bookselling? No, I wasn't, he answered. Of course, her family had much money, so they could afford to help her with any little fantasy she had that day. But then again, she did one thing for 20 years, so it was more than a fantasy. I can imagine that some people were shocked. He sighed and said, "Her marrying that Chuck guy shocked me. I tell you, he's 10 levels of creepy." Barbara frowned and said, "I never got that from him." "That's because he's good at hiding things," he said. "That man could hide that he hid a dead body so well that you would never figure out that he had done it. He also had an even worse temper than Misty did. I guess they were made for each other. Two of the biggest blowhards that ever walked the earth." "So, what brings you to Waterhorse?" "I got a call from Misty before the whole thing happened. She told me that she had something that Taylor trusted her to keep safe." "What kind of thing?" she asked, "because I know those two didn't get along." "Well, he must have trusted her enough to keep something safe. She told me she would let the bank know she had given him the right to the safe deposit box, so I will see what it was and then come to the event. It's the least I can do for Taylor." Taylor's former teacher burst into tears and Barbara wrapped her arms around him. "A hiker found the body and called the police. After he had finished throwing up," the officer told Hawk and Miller. "The smell of burning flesh filled his nostrils, but the sight made his blood run cold. Tied to a stake were the charred remains of a person. He had read about the burning of witches in the Middle Ages, but to see it was something else. The body was tied to a stake with chains because using rope would have allowed the victim to escape. However, he doubted the victim would have survived with the number of injuries that she had sustained. And I thought all the gore comes out during Halloween," Miller remarked. "Don't you know? Every day is Halloween here," he said. "Okay, let's get our teams in here and gather evidence. Meanwhile, I need to figure out how we will get her body down." "Why do I have a feeling it's the same killer?" Miller said. "Because burning is a key element he's using," Hawk remarked. "Yeah, looks like he moved to displaying his victims. And a bookstore will be next," Miller pointed out. "And the husband," Hawk added as well. "I met a former teacher of Taylor," Barbara told Sally and Sam when she walked in. "Someone has good memories of him," Sally said, earning Barbara a sharp look. "Well, I'm glad someone does," Daniel said. "Why was he here?" Sam asked her. "To pick something up that Misty saved for him that Taylor had entrusted her with. I didn't even know that he trusted her with something important." "Do you think it's because he knew Taylor?" Sam asked her. I think that's the reason," Barbara reasoned. "But what it is, I don't think we'll ever find out unless he chooses to tell someone." "Do you think that he will?" "Who knows," she said. "Maybe one day." She tried Emma's phone again, but got nothing. Something started to nag her, telling her that something wasn't right. She then turned to Daniel, who had just put a girl's books into a bag. "Come again," he said, and the girl left. "Daniel, can I ask you a question?" "Does it involve you yelling at me?" Daniel asked her. "No, it doesn't," she replied. Did you go to school here in Waterhorse?" "Yes," he answered. Did you ever remember either Misty or Chuck?" "No," he said. "By the time I got to school, they had already graduated from high school." "Why?" "Because the man I talked to told me that Misty and Chuck had nasty tempers, and that doesn't fit with the picture I saw on the microfilm of people's memories of them." "If you want to talk to someone who has been here all her life and went to the same school they did, my mother would be the perfect choice." "Really?" "Yeah, she knew them both. She didn't go to Misty's funeral because she claimed Misty was a big fake." "Her death wasn't fake." "She wasn't talking about the status of her being on Earth," Sally told Sam. "Thanks, I'll talk with her." "Bosley, don't tell her that I've been overeating candy." Barbara grinned and said, "Your secret is safe with me." Sally's mother lived right on the coast, and the sound of the waves crashing against the rocks made this place feel like it was not part of the rest of the world. The house that Sally's mother lived in was just the short distance away. As she got out, the smell of fish filled her nostrils and made her smile. These smells reminded Barbara of why she had come back home. She could smell some still in bloom when she arrived at the light blue double-story building. She rang the bell and waited. A few minutes later it opened, and a much older woman stood there. She could tell that this was Sally's mother. "Hello, dear." "I'm Barbara Marcus," she said. "Your daughter works for me?" She smiled and said, "Yes, Sally told me you would be coming. Why don't we have a little chat on the back patio? I have it heated, so we should be fine." "Thanks," she said, and Barbara entered the house. About 20 minutes later, they're both enjoying a cup of tea, and Sally's mother said, I was shocked at how Misty's life ended, burned to death inside of a car. However, something always told me that she would come to a bad end. What do you mean, she asked. Because of who she was, Sally's mother told her. She was always someone who thought that she could talk to people however she wanted. She didn't care what happened as long as she got exactly what she wanted. Some girl crying her eyes out in the girls' bathroom. Most of the time, that was all Misty's fault. Thank the Lord that my mother taught me better. So, she was a bully. For the time I knew her, she said, I was a freshman in high school when Misty arrived. Our school was connected so you would go in as a baby and come out as an adult. It was much better to have one school that taught all the grades than to build a new one. Of course, the school would be torn down when I graduated, and then there was the topic of Chuck. What about him? Well, he had a bigger temper than Misty did, and I don't doubt that her two children took after them. Both my girls were bullied by their children. That was why we were all glad when the twin horrors finally left and went out into the world, or as we like to call it, as far away from us as we're happy about. I don't get that from Chuck the first time I met him, and plenty of people have good things to say about both, because he's good at hiding it. Then Misty got that space and opened her bookshop. I'm not against that, but I now order my books from Amazon. Well, I have a shop that you might like, Barbara told her. Keep you away from Amazon. Well, only if you don't have the title I'm looking for, she said. Anyway, when I left school, I went to college and then returned and taught. I taught Taylor, who was a lot better than Misty. I was the one that suggested he open his store after everyone in the town found out that he had won the lottery. How much did he win? Barbara asked. About $50 million, she answered, and Barbara whistled. Yeah, everyone was shocked. So, he did. The closest that he would ever get to be in the book world. I was so proud of him. I can imagine, said Barbara. Did he come to you about what Misty was doing? Of course he did, she said. The moment that she found out that he was cutting into what she was doing, she threatened him. She told him that she would make his life a living hell if he continued to have his shop open. Do you think it was about her desire for control? Barbara asked her. Several bookstores opened and people had a choice. Oh, I know it was about control, she said, shaking her head. And even though she's dead, I still feel like she's trying to control something from beyond. Did anyone personally tell her what they thought of her? Barbara asked, knowing that not many people could keep their mouths shut after being attacked. Oh, several people did, including those who had the power to arrest her. Still, she ignored everyone and continued like she always did. Soon, everyone just started to ignore her. I mean, she did have that book club that always came in, and many in that group still loved her, but I think that if she hadn't been killed, she probably would have gone under. Taylor provided better service. He had coffee and muffins, something that Misty didn't have. Barbara knew what she was talking about. Sometimes people offered options to get customers away from a long-standing business. It was a tactic that she didn't touch. Maybe her cats brought people in because they were so cute, but she didn't have things like food or drinks, mainly because she had cats and didn't want them to touch human food. So what about the children? Barbara asked. We've talked a lot about the mother, but what about the children? As I said, they were very much like their mother. They always had something wrong with them because they would stand outside their mother's store and glare at people. It was like that part of the street belonged to them. And the daughter, oh, she was a carbon copy of her mother. She had a nasty streak a mile wide and loved to break into people's cars. I caught her trying to break into mine as I exited school. That got her suspended for a week. I'm sure that Misty hated that, Barbara reasoned. Oh, she hated that I was the one that caught her, she said. She marched into school like she still owned the place. She told the principal that he would pay if he didn't allow her daughter back. He made some comment, and she almost clawed his eyes out. Dear Lord. Let's just say that the teachers took issue with her and clarified that they didn't go to other shops to get their children their books. Oh, and when Emma's new store opened, filled with all those beautiful books, she marched over and threw dog poop all over the girl that was dressed like a fairy. The poor thing cried all the way home, and then the woman, and then it was the women's battle. The girl's mother came in with something I've only seen police officers use. She started to smash all of Misty's displays, and the sound of broken glass brought many people out, along with the screaming, the hair pulling, and the kicking in the stomach. She called Misty all sorts of names, which I won't repeat, and then threatened to make her life as much of a living hell as she was making everyone on the street. I felt terrible for the poor child. She's just trying to make a bit of pocket money. Emma was so upset that a 14-year-old had been assaulted with dog poop. Barbara shook her head. It made her double think about what Sally wanted to do. She figured that Sally had no clue about what the kind of person that they remembered. But then again, she doubted that anyone was coming to recognize a sour woman, and was more into remembering Taylor, who she believed had done more good than Misty had. Unlike Misty, Taylor sold books because he loved the business, not to make money. That's something that Barbara could understand. Was there anything of Chuck inside of them? Barbara asked her. Of course, his temper, she said. As for the son, he left town after graduating high school. There is no telling what he did with his life, though I've heard that he's back along with his psycho sister. He's working on some insurance thing, Barbara said, not remembering what Chuck had told her about what his son was doing. I didn't go to Misty's funeral, but I saw Chuck's son that afternoon. I thought it was odd that he wasn't wearing black. Why wasn't he wearing black if he loved his mother? I did wear black when my husband died, Barbara told her. That was because that was in his final wishes. He made it clear that he didn't want anyone to wear black, so I wore blue and white, his two favorite colors. But that's different, she said. You loved your husband. I doubt that boy had a single loving bone in his body. He was a nasty piece of work when he was a teenager, and I don't think he ever changed. Suddenly the phone rang, and Barbara saw it was Sam on the line. She pardoned herself for a moment and went to answer it. We have a problem, he told her, making Barbara's blood run cold. What kind of problem? She asked. Chuck's son was here, he said, and I know him. Barbara stared at the floor and asked, How do you know him? Not on the line, he said. Come back to the store and I'll tell you everything. I'll be there, she promised, and then hung up. I hope that I was able to help you, she said to Barbara. Yes, you gave me a lot to think about, she said, and she told her goodbyes and left. When she returned to the shop, she found that it was closed and the front glass had been broken. She had a feeling that Chuck's son had done it. Letting herself in, she found Sam and Sally drinking some of the coffee Sam had most likely brewed. Don't tell me Chuck's son did that damage in the front, she reasoned. Correct, Sally said. I've never seen one person so angry in all my life. Barbara looked at Sam and asked, How do you know Chuck's son? From my time in Florida, he answered. Several years ago, we had gotten word that some of the school boards were getting death threats, telling them they were the hub of pornographic and vulgar books. I didn't even know that some group thought like that until those threats came in. His name was Justin Hart, and he's a nasty piece of work. Sally's mother told me as much. I'm sure she mentioned that she doesn't know what he did after he left Waterhorse. Sam nodded, and Sally asked, What did he do after leaving town? After I'd done some digging because I like to know what kind of unhinged person I'm dealing with, I found out that he had been arrested several times by the Anchorage police. I called them, and they told me that he has a sick hobby of blowing things up. He's been in the military doing demolition work, and even did a tour in Iraq during Operation Freedom. If he was like that, why allow him to join? I doubt that anyone knew about any mental problems he might have had. Anyway, I also dug into anyone who might be connected to him. And that's how I found out about his chemist sister. You mean Annie, Sally said. He nodded and said, Yeah, that's her. So why was he here? Barbara asked him, her interest piqued. To try and get books banned, he said. Oh, it's there, not here, sorry. That was my boo-boo. I was supposed to put there, not here. He's been a huge in those circles, which is why we know that he was the one who sent those death threats. Why wasn't he ever arrested? Who knows, Sam answered. But it was due to those threats that we discovered much about the group he was involved in. At least 20 groups are promoting book bans and censorship of ideas. Only one of them is what the FBI considers to be a terrorist group. They're called Citizens Against Intellectual Freedom and Indecency. They are a group that has dozens of videos of them using guns, like the kind that gun control groups want to be banned, military exercises, and several other beautiful events. They see the freedom they disagree with rotting away at its core, and they believe in the many things the Nazis believed in. He and his sister have been members of that group for the last 10 years. Alright. So there was some errors in chapter 6, but I actually just spoke over them. So yeah. But thankfully it wasn't a large amount. It was maybe three or four. I will probably say 3. Probably say 3 is a safe bet. Alright, so tomorrow is Saturday. My brother's going to be with his the friends, and we're going to be having a birthday party and all that. So it'll probably be next week that I will start on chapter 7. And we have 2 more chapters and an epilogue to go before we're done. So I will see you guys around.